Welcome back to AU Family Channel, and thank you so much for being here. It truly means the world to have you as one of our loyal listeners. If our stories have ever touched your heart, we are so grateful that you keep coming back to spend this time with us. So find somewhere comfortable, take a slow, deep breath, and let us begin today's story, together. When I was 16, our class was the one the school had quietly given up on. We had gone through 4 teachers in 1 year, and the 5th one lasted a single afternoon before she walked out crying. We were proud of that. We wore our reputation like armor. So when they told us a substitute named Mrs. Aldrich would be taking us for the whole term, we grinned at each other and started planning how fast we could break her too. What none of us knew, what I would not learn until it was almost too late, was that this strange strict woman had come to us on purpose, carrying a secret, and she was about to change every single one of our lives. You have to understand what our class was. We were the group the timetable hid at the end of the corridor, the room other teachers walked past a little faster. 30 of us, labeled trouble before we ever opened our mouths. Some of us had rough homes. Some of us just decided that if the school expected nothing, we would give it nothing. I was somewhere in the middle, smart enough to know better and angry enough not to care. We had learned that being written off can feel like freedom. If no one believes in you, no one can be disappointed. We told ourselves we liked it that way. We were lying, but we did not know it yet. Mrs. Aldrich arrived on a cold Monday in the middle of a downpour. She was older than our other teachers, maybe 60, with gray hair pinned back and a long dark coat that dripped rain onto the floor. She did not smile. She did not introduce herself with a nervous joke the way the others had. She simply walked to the front, set down a worn leather bag, and stood there in total silence, looking at each of us, one face at a time, slow and unhurried. The room got loud on purpose. We threw the usual noise at her, the whole opening act. And she just kept looking, calm as stone, like she had all the time in the world. The silence went on so long it started to feel strange. One by one, we ran out of things to shout. When the room finally went quiet, she spoke, and her voice was low and steady and did not waste a word. She said she was not there to be our friend, and she was not there to be liked. She was there because she had chosen to be, and she would not be leaving no matter what we did. She said she already knew what the school thought of us, and that she thought they were wrong. Then she handed out a green notebook to every person in the room and told us that in her class, the first rule was simple. We were going to write. We laughed, of course. Write what? We asked. About what? She said it did not matter. 1 page every day, about anything at all, true or invented, angry or bored, it made no difference to her. The only rule was that the pen had to keep moving. She said she would read every single word, and she would write back to each of us, and no one else would ever see it. Most of us scrawled garbage that first day. I filled my page with insults aimed straight at her. I wanted to see what she would do. I wanted to watch the calm crack. I handed it in with a smirk, certain I had found the fastest way to break Mrs. Aldrich. The next morning my green notebook was back on my desk. I flipped it open ready to gloat. Under my page of insults, in small neat handwriting, she had written a reply. She did not scold me. She did not report me. She had answered every cruel line as if it were a real thought worth taking seriously. At the bottom she had written, "You write with more force than anyone in this room. That is a gift. I wonder what you could do with it if you ever aimed it at something worth building." I read it 3 times. I hated how it made me feel. For the first time in a long while, someone had looked at the worst of me and seen something else. We did not surrender easily. If anything, that first week we tried harder. We slammed doors. We answered every question with jokes. One boy, Callum, the loudest of all of us, knocked a whole stack of her books to the floor and dared her with his eyes to react. She walked over, knelt down in her long coat, and picked them up one by one without a word. Then she looked at him and said, "You have a strong pair of hands. When you are finished testing me, I have got a job that needs them." Callum did not know what to do with that. None of us did. She refused to give us the fight we wanted, and slowly that started to unsettle everything. Her methods were strange. She threw out the standard lessons in the first week. Instead she brought in poetry, old and strange and full of feeling, and she read it aloud in that low steady voice until even the back row went quiet. She made each of us pick one subject in the whole world to become the expert on, anything we chose, and then stand and teach it to the rest. She said everyone in that room knew something worth knowing, and it was a crime that no one had ever bothered to ask us what it was. Some of us picked cars. Some picked music, or fishing, or a grandmother's recipes. For the first time, school felt like it was about us and not against us. The thing that got under my skin the most was the board. Every morning, next to each of our names, she wrote a single word. Not a grade. A word she said she saw in us. Beside Callum she wrote leader. Beside a quiet girl named Priya who never spoke, she wrote watcher, and then, in class, she began asking Priya what she had noticed, because a watcher sees what others miss. Beside my name she wrote builder. I asked her once, sharp and defensive, what that was supposed to mean. She said, "You tear things down so easily because you understand exactly how they are held together. That is the same skill it takes to build. You just have not decided to yet." Somewhere in those weeks, without any of us admitting it, the fight drained out of the room. We stopped counting how long until she quit, because it became clear she was not going to. She was there before us every morning and there after us every afternoon. She learned all 30 of our names in 2 days, and more than that, she learned our stories, the ones we thought we had hidden. She knew which of us came to school hungry and quietly kept crackers in her desk. She knew which of us flinched at raised voices and never once raised hers at those students. She was strict, she demanded everything, but underneath the strictness was something none of us were used to. She paid attention. The notebooks changed everything. Mine slowly stopped being a weapon and became the one honest place I had. I started writing things I had never told anyone, about my father who had left, about the anger I could not explain, about how tired I was of being the boy everyone expected to fail. And every morning her small neat handwriting was there, waiting, never judging, always answering. She never told me I was fine. She told me I was capable, which is a very different thing, and a much harder one to argue with. I began to look forward to that green notebook more than I would have ever confessed out loud. It was the first time an adult had asked to hear me and actually meant it. Callum was the real turning point for the class. His whole life people had called him a thug and he had decided to prove them right. Mrs. Aldridge did the opposite. She put him in charge. When a new student arrived halfway through the term, nervous and small, she told Callum it was his job to make sure the boy felt safe. She said a leader protects the smallest one in the room. And Callum, who had spent years being feared, suddenly had a reason to be trusted instead. He grew about a foot taller that day, on the inside. Watching him change made the rest of us wonder what she might be right about in us too, if we let her. She had a saying she repeated so often it eventually lived in all of our heads. She would look at us over her reading glasses and say, "I am not interested in who you have been. I am only interested in who you are becoming. At first we rolled our eyes. But she said it after every mistake, every failed test, every bad day, until it stopped being a slogan and started being a door. It meant the past did not get the final say. It meant a boy who had failed everything could still turn into someone. For kids who had been defined entirely by our worst moments, that one sentence was like being handed a key to a cell we did not know we could leave. By the middle of the term, something had happened that the school did not have a category for. Our class, the lost cause, the room they hid at the end of the corridor, had become the class that showed up. Attendance climbed. The noise turned into actual arguments about actual ideas. Priya, the girl who never spoke, gave a 10-minute talk on the stars and had us silent with wonder. Callum helped a struggling kid with reading during his own lunch break. And me, the builder, I started staying after class to help her carry boxes, just to have a reason to talk to her. We were not fixed. But we were awake. And a room full of written-off kids had begun, quietly, to believe. I asked her once why she had taken us. I told her, straight out, that everyone knew our class was where teachers went to fail. Why would anyone choose it? She was tidying her desk, and she paused for just a second before she answered, and I did not understand the weight of the pause until much later. She said, because somewhere along the way, someone decided you were not worth the effort, and I have never in my life been able to walk past that. She said the students the world gives up on are the ones who need one stubborn person to refuse. Then she smiled, a rare full smile, and told me to go home before it rained again. She was demanding in a way no one had ever been with us, and I think that was its own kind of love. She handed back my first proper essay covered in corrections and made me write it again. And again. I was furious. I told her the other teachers would have just passed me. She looked at me and said that the other teachers did not think I could do better, and that passing me would have been the same as agreeing with them. She said, I am hard on you because I refuse to insult you with low expectations. Do it again. I did it again. When I finally got it right, the pride I felt was unlike anything school had ever given me before. Looking back, the strangest thing was how tired she sometimes seemed, and how well she hid it. There were mornings she gripped the edge of her desk for a moment before she began. Afternoons when her face went pale and she would sit very still, breathing slow, and then carry on as if nothing had happened. Once I saw her take pills from a small bottle in her bag and put it quickly away when she noticed me looking. We were teenagers, wrapped up in ourselves. We noticed, and then we let it go. We thought she was just old, just tired, just strict Mrs. Aldrich who never missed a day. We had no idea what it was costing her to keep showing up for us. It was the last week of term when I found out. I had stayed late as usual, helping her stack chairs, and she had stepped out to the office. Her leather bag was open on the desk, and a letter had slipped half out of it. I was not trying to snoop. I saw the hospital name across the top, large and official, and my eyes caught the words before I could stop them. It was a medical letter. It spoke about her condition, about treatment she had declined, about how long she might have. I stood there in the empty classroom with the rain against the windows and read words that turned my whole understanding of the last 3 months completely upside down. Mrs. Aldrich was dying. She had a cancer that had spread, and according to that letter she had chosen to stop the treatment that might have bought her a little more time. The dates on the page told a story I could barely hold. She had received her diagnosis before the term even began. She had known, when she walked into our room that cold rainy Monday, exactly what was happening inside her. She had known, when she stood in silence and looked at each of our faces, that she did not have many months left. And out of all the ways a person could choose to spend the time they had remaining, she had chosen us. The class nobody wanted. The kids everyone else had given up on. I do not remember putting the letter back. I remember the sound of the rain, and the way my hands were shaking, and how the green notebook stacked on her desk suddenly looked like the most precious things I had ever seen. Every reply she had written to me, in that small neat hand, late into the night, she had written while she was sick. Every essay she made me redo, every box I helped her carry, every morning she gripped the desk and breathed slow and carried on, she had been spending strength she would never get back. On us. On me. I sat down in an empty chair and I cried in a way I had not cried since I was a small boy. When she came back and found me sitting there, she understood at once. She saw my face, and she saw the bag, and something in her softened. She did not get angry. She sat down across from me and she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I did not want you to carry this. It is not your burden." I told her she should be resting. I told her she should be with her own family, doing the things people do when time is short, not stacking chairs in a freezing classroom with the worst kids in the school. And she looked at me with such steadiness, such peace, that it silenced me completely. She said, "Let me tell you something I have learned, and I need you to really hear it." When she got her diagnosis, she said, she had sat with the question that finds everyone eventually. What do you do with the time you have left? She had no children of her own. Her husband had passed years before. And she said she had realized that the truest thing she knew how to do, the one gift she had, was to reach the kids the world had thrown away, because she had once been one of them. She said she could either spend her last months being afraid, or she could spend them being useful. She had chosen us. And she said she would choose us again 100 times. I asked her the question that was tearing me apart. I asked, "Why did you not tell us?" And she said, "Because the moment you knew, you would have stopped fighting me. You would have gone soft and sad and careful, and you would have handed me your best behavior out of pity." She said pity was the last thing she wanted from us. She wanted the real thing. The arguments, the eye rolls, the slow stubborn climb of 30 kids deciding for themselves that they were worth something. She said, "I did not come here to be mourned. I came here to work. And I have never in 40 years of teaching been prouder of a single class than I am of this one." She made me promise not to tell the others, not yet, and I kept that promise even though it nearly broke me. That last week was the hardest of my life, sitting in that room, knowing what none of them knew, watching her teach with everything she had left. And she did teach, right to the end of that term, never missing a day, never letting the pain show longer than a breath. On the final afternoon she stood at the front and told us she was so proud of who we were becoming that she could hardly find the words. She wrote one last thing on the board, above all our names. It said, "You were never the problem. You were the promise." Then she wished us well. Mrs. Aldridge did not come back after the break. A permanent teacher took the room, and the school told us, in a short flat announcement, that our substitute had passed away over the holidays. The other students in other classes barely reacted. Just a name they did not know. But in our room, 30 kids sat in a silence deeper than the one she had faced us with on her first day. And then, one by one, without anyone asking, we opened our green notebooks and we read her handwriting again, all those replies written by a dying woman who had chosen to spend her final strength telling each of us, in private, exactly who we could become. That was the day the whole class finally understood what we had been given. We found out later how far she had planned it. She had left a letter with the school office to be given to us, and in it she asked only one thing. She did not ask to be remembered. She did not ask for thanks. She asked us to keep the notebooks going. She wrote that a page a day, honest and unafraid, would keep us in the habit of knowing our own minds. She wrote that the world would try again to tell us who we were, and that we must not let it, because she had seen the truth of us and the truth was good. She signed it, not as our teacher, but as someone who had believed in us. That was all she wanted. To have believed in us. Callum stood up at her small memorial. There were not many people there. She had outlived most of her family and kept few close friends, and the pews were mostly empty except for our class, 30 rough kids in the only good clothes we owned. Callum, the boy everyone had called a thug, spoke about a woman who had put him in charge of protecting the smallest kid in the room, and how that had been the first time in his life anyone had trusted him with something instead of bracing for him to ruin it. He said she had not just taught him. She had shown him who he was allowed to be. Half the room was crying. All of us were changed. Her impact did not end when she did. That is the part one still marvel at. Priya, the girl who never spoke, became the one who spoke for all of us, and years later she stood in front of her own classroom as a science teacher, telling students about the stars. Callum went into work with troubled kids, the ones the system had written off, because he knew better than anyone what one stubborn believer could do. And me, the builder who tore things down, I became a teacher too. I did not plan it. I just could not walk past a kid the world had given up on, because a woman in a long dark coat had once refused to walk past me. She lives on in every one of us. I keep her saying on the wall of my own classroom now. I am not interested in who you have been. I am only interested in who you are becoming. Every year I get the class other teachers dread, and I ask for it on purpose, the way she once did. I hand out notebooks on the first day, and I write back to every student, every night, no matter how tired I am. And when a kid tries to break me, the way I once tried to break her, I do not fight them. I just keep showing up, calm and steady, until they understand the same thing I finally understood. That someone has decided they are worth the effort. That someone refuses to let them go. Some of them ask me why. Why I bother with the hard class, why I stay late, why I keep believing in kids who seem determined to prove me wrong. And I tell them about a substitute teacher nobody wanted, who walked into a room of lost causes carrying a secret and a diagnosis, and gave us the last months of her life without ever asking for a word of thanks. I tell them she is the reason I am standing there at all. And I watch it happen, over and over, the moment a written-off kid realizes an adult sees something good in them. That moment is Mrs. Aldrich, still working, still reaching them, decades after she is gone. Her belief just keeps traveling forward through all of us. I think a lot about the fact that she never got any credit. There was no award, no assembly, no plaque with her name on it. The school moved on within a week. Most of the world never knew that a dying woman had spent her final autumn pouring herself into 30 kids everyone else had abandoned. And she wanted it that way. She did not do it to be seen. She did it because she believed it was the truest use of the time she had left. There is a kind of greatness that does its work quietly and disappears before the applause could ever arrive, and I have come to believe it is the highest kind there is. She was the greatest teacher I ever had, and almost no one knows her name. I still have my green notebook. It is worn soft at the corners now, and the pages are full of a teenager's messy handwriting and, beneath each one, her small neat replies. I read it when I lose my way, when a class beats me down and I wonder why I keep doing this. And there, waiting for me the way it always was, is her voice. You write with more force than anyone in this room. That is a gift. I wonder what you could do with it if you ever aimed it at something worth building. I aimed it, Mrs. Aldrich. I built a whole life out of what you saw in me. Every kid I reach is a page in a notebook you started and never got to finish. If she could hear me now, I would want her to know that it worked. All of it. The silence on the first day, the words beside our names, the essays she made us write again, the notebooks she filled with her fading strength. It worked. 30 kids the school had given up on grew into people who show up, who protect the smallest one in the room, who refuse to walk past the ones the world discards. She poured out the last of herself and it did not disappear. It multiplied. It is still multiplying, in classrooms and workplaces and homes she will never see, carried by people she loved enough to spend her dying on. That is not a small life. That is the largest life I have ever known. Here is what she taught me, and I hope you carry it out of this story the way I carried it out of that classroom. There are people in this world who spend their last and best strength on others and never once ask for thanks. They do not do it for credit or comfort or applause. They do it because they have decided that another person is worth it, especially the ones everyone else has stopped believing in. You may never know who those people are in your own life. You may not recognize them until they are gone. So look closer at the strict ones, the demanding ones, the ones who refuse to give up on you. Some of them are giving you far more than you can see. And here is the other half of it. You do not have to be dying to live the way she lived. You do not need a diagnosis to decide that someone the world has written off is worth your effort. There is a kid, a coworker, a neighbor, a lost cause somewhere near you right now, waiting for one stubborn person to refuse to walk past. You could be that person. You could be somebody's Mrs. Aldrich. The belief you pour into another human being does not end with you. It travels. It outlives you. It reaches people you will never meet. That is the quiet, staggering power each of us is holding, and most of us never even choose to use it. She chose. I hope you will too. Thank you so much for staying with me all the way to the end of this story. It truly means the world to me that you are here. If Mrs. Aldrich reached your heart the way she reached mine, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to AU Family Channel, where a brand new story is waiting for you every single week. And remember this. Some people pour their last strength into others and change lives without ever asking for thanks, so look closer at the ones who refuse to give up on you, and become that person for someone else. Thank you again for being here, and for having a heart open enough to listen. I will see you in the next one.